when those terms were.
Correct.
Hi, Randy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good.
You just turned my camera on. I didn't know it was turned off.
You must do that. I don't know if it does automatically. I always have to turn mine on too. I don't really remember turning it off.
I think it's every time you join a new meeting link, it
Automatically.
starts off muted and off.
Yeah, it depends on the settings that people have when they when they set up the meeting. You can set it so that video cameras are off and people are muted, or cameras are on if people want to have them on.
That's somebody else's, you're saying not me, but Kyle or whoever
Right.
up on the village end.
Yeah. And it could even just be kind of the default settings and he didn't go in to change them.
Mhm.
Frank, you said Frank's being reappointed? I'm the host.
And obviously, as soon as we get back to people, in person, I did not understand he was going to join us until then, but
Right. I mean, the last time I talked to him, he had come in for something else into the village hall, and he had said that he doesn't feel comfortable doing the online thing, but he's more than willing to start back up as soon as we go back to in person.
okay.
So vote wise, I know there's only 2 of you here right now, but how are your feelings as far as when you guys want to start back up, as long as the governor extends his orders? Would you rather do online, or? And I know the planning board wants to do online as long as they can.
So the governor's going to be like, allow it, but not be mandatory? Is that how it?
It's not mandatory now. It's
Oh,
just
really?
allowed now.
Hmm.
Because you don't have to meet all the original requirements for
For
that
public.
you would have to do if you were physically or normally doing a
There'll be some point when it won't be allowed anymore, right?
correct. The only, I mean, it's online is always allowed, but if you're going to do it once the governor's executive order ceases, you actually have to post where everybody's address is, and the public has the right to show up at your place where you're streaming. And
We
so
don't want
that's
that.
why, I know, and that's why
We're
at
going to
this
meet in
point,
person if that happens.
Yeah, that's right.
right, and that's why as long as it's allowed to extend, or as long as he's extending it, people are choosing to do it, but you don't have to at this time.
Right.
But once he removes it, then technically we need to go back to in person automatically.
And I would say the downside of it is there's actually pluses and minuses, obviously. But a downside is I think that it is much more challenging for the public to weigh in,
Mhm.
because it is way more restrictive to just provide comments. You can't come and ask a question or, like learn information and then have another follow-up question. So I
Correct.
think that's a reason to get back, not necessarily right now, but I guess I would gauge it more on who's been vaccinated, who feel comfortable,
Right.
So-
And that's
some-
why, like I said, I'm asking people how they feel, and then just kind of doing it as the more people want one or the other is how we're going to move forward. But like I said, the last time I asked the planning board, I think last month, they basically said that as long as they can do it online, they want to continue online. And I
Okay.
think even the HPAR prefers it online. It's easier for them, but like I said, it's
Mhm.
right now it's up to the
Each
individual
board.
boards how you want to handle it.
Well, maybe at the end of the meeting, we can talk about that when everybody's on.
Hey, Susan, I have a question. Where do
Sure.
you, when you were meeting in person, where were you meeting? At the village hall?
Yeah, in the courtroom space, basically across this hall from the village office.
Okay.
But if we go back now, we're probably going to be upstairs in the ballroom where we can spread out more.
Yeah,
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah,
The trustees right now are holding, their meetings in public, and they've got one whole wall spaced out with tables for the board to sit at, and then they've got seats every 6 feet or whatever for the public.
Okay.
So it's all set up to basically be socially distanced.
Does anybody know who 05782 is?
No, I was thinking it might be Marcy, but, oh,
Hi.
No, who is it? Oh, it's
They said 5 o'clock, so I just logged on. Am I not supposed to be here?
no, it's fine. I think that hi, Rich.
Hi.
I think that we'll start the meeting, and then when we get to your agenda item, your audio will be on. I don't remember what happens with the video, whether.
I mean, at this point, you are first on the agenda,
Yeah.
so you can stay on as
Okay.
is.
We
We're
don't
waiting
have all our
for,
members yet.
Okay,
Right.
that's
we're
fine.
still missing several members.
Rich, what's your last name?
Brown,
Brown?
like the color, yep.
Okay, that's easy. Thank you.
So I have, like I said, I haven't heard from Georgia, Dave, or Marcy, but
Oh, actually, I don't think Dave is. I think he had he was scheduled to have an operation very recently,
Oh,
although I saw him yesterday.
do you have a number that you can call Marcy and just see if she's around?
I don't, except for whatever's in the phone book. I don't.
Okay, let me
Okay,
see if I
landline.
have it.
Yeah, we didn't even have a quorum, do we?
No. Okay, I have a phone number for her. I'm gonna try calling
Okay, thanks.
her number. There is no answer at Marcy's.
No
So
Frank, no Denise.
I'm checking on Georgia. I don't have a phone number for her. And if you said you knew Dave is gone,
But yeah, I happened to see him yesterday, but I didn't talk to him. But a couple weeks ago is when he mentioned that he was likely not going to be here due to an operation.
mhm. Okay. It's up to you how you want to start handling this
We
then.
can't do anything until we get a quorum.
I know.
Thank goodness for Randy here.
Has that happened before? Seems
It
kinda-
No.
may have at some point, but it's been so long that I have no memory of it. Especially with two alternates. I mean, all we need for a quorum is 3 people, and we have a total of 7 potential members. And it's on Zoom. It's not like weather related or any other excuse that sometimes happens. You could be in Florida and still join the meeting.
Right. And like I said, that's the other thing that this with the governor's thing allows is basically you could be out of state, you can vote and stuff like that.
Are
But
they even address that? I guess that's true. It's all different.
so you guys, I mean, technically, is it written that you guys actually have to set the public hearings?
I don't know. I just know we always do. I mean, we really don't
Because,
take any action. I don't even know that I can open the open a meeting.
right, but I'm saying if
Can't
you
do
guys
minutes.
aren't have to do it,
Yeah.
then technically I could still set, put in notices and set a public hearing kind of thing, but
Rich is going to be easy for that, but unless we have a discussion, the next one's going to be really hard to decide if you're going to do that.
mhm,
Right.
Won't be throwing axes in my backyard.
Yes. So we don't know Georgia, we don't know how to get hold of Georgia or Marcy.
I only have an email for her, so I mean, I can send out another email, but
Hmm. Who lives closest to her?
I'm not sure where she lives.
Lives closest to you, actually, but not by much. She lives on Susquehanna.
Does she live in her mom's old house?
I didn't know she had a mom here.
Yeah,
Marcy.
Holly owned the,
Oh, Georgia. I don't know where Georgia lives. I was talking about Marcy.
oh, yeah, Georgia. That's what I was thinking of.
So if we can't meet, then we'll have to reschedule. Is that what will have to happen?
Well, and that's why I was asking if all we're doing is, I mean, tonight's meeting is basically the board asking questions if they have any and setting a public hearing. And if
Right.
it's not part of the code where they have to be the ones setting the public hearing and it can just be set, then I would assume that
Yeah, I honestly
we
don't.
could do it as, just do it. But, and it's not standard, it's not required in New York State to do it that way. It's just, that's how the village has always done it.
It's our norm, yeah. How about like for the trustees, have they ever had public hearings other than one that they set themselves?
No, because, I mean, I can physically see them making motions to set public hearings.
Okay,
So I mean, they actually make a motion
Yeah, we
and
don't
then
usually-
second,
true.
and that's why I'm saying
Yeah.
it's, everybody's doing it a little different, but I don't think it's necessarily a New York State requirement to do it that way.
Does the planning board make a motion?
I can't remember if they make a
Sometimes.
motion or whether they just said it.
Sometimes it's sometimes not.
Yeah,
I know that we rarely would, but.
like I said, you guys, mean, the
HR
board-
does it.
the boards have always been the ones doing it, but but it's not written into the code and it doesn't say that they have to be the ones doing it. It just says a public hearing's required.
Yeah,
Right. I would just schedule it.
And that's why I'm saying, I guess for this thing, it's just,
but what about 124 Main, Randy?
Does that need a public, that needs a public
Yes.
hearing too, right?
Yeah.
yes,
I mean,
that
just
would be
the-
public hearings.
It's like,
But the question with that one is also, completeness of an application and things like that, where we do usually,
yeah, it's like we need to have discussion before we have a public hearing. in my
oh,
opinion.
now, and I would say, we're not having a meeting now, but I'll still say with 49 Beaver, it certainly seems like a complete application. So I don't, but these are both, it's kind of hard to make an argument without a meeting and board input to kind of set one and not set the other.
Right. I mean, I would like to just reschedule this meeting for next week. And
We can't, it's next week is
Oh,
eight.
we can't do it on a Tuesday, but
Right, we could do it on
we
a,
could do it.
But we also have a certain notice, don't we have, what is the public?
Oh, yeah, I gotta give notice for those. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, technically, I think it's like 72 hours is what they would like a minimum of, just so you can contact like the newspapers and hopefully we can just get it changed on the
let me go,
websites and stuff like that.
Right.
But
I'm gonna,
as far as,
will you send an email to Marcy and Georgia? And
I did already.
Okay, I'm gonna go see if I can get Dave's cell and I don't think I have it, but I know Ralph does. One second.
So you need to,
George is here.
oh,
Okay,
Hi,
did you,
Georgia.
okay. We got our 3 at least.
Well, except Susan left.
Oh,
oh, she's back. She heard you.
I'm back, I heard, but I don't see Georgia yet.
She is, she's here.
Okay,
She just has to,
yay, Georgia, how are you?
Hi,
Hi.
good. Sorry, I'm actually I'm moderating another Zoom call for work on the other line. So I'm like, I'm here, I promise.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then the time is 5:15, and I will open the, what is today? April 6th zoning board of appeal meeting for April of 2021. We have two addresses on our list with several subsections for the 124 Main. But we will begin first with reviewing 49 Beaver Street. And before we begin, I just want to note that I worked with Richard and Ann on a project about probably more than 15 years ago. I have no involvement in this project at all, but I just want to make everyone aware that I had that connection with them professionally. So this 49 Beaver, as I said, I think that this is a certainly seems like a complete application, but maybe Rich, if you would like to kind of just explain things to us.
Well, we went in front of HPAR last year and got that approved. The crosses were aware of it, didn't submit a letter, and we recently had the property surveyed, and our intent is to put the fence on the property on the survey line. And in following the survey results, they questioned this, and that's why we're seeking a variance, and we're seeking also to complete it from the initial 24-foot section, and it would be a 46.5-foot section connecting on photo 2. If that you see where that board is sticking out on the white. Do you have a copy of my application?
And we
I can
do,
pull it up on the screen
Okay.
if you want.
yeah.
So it would connect at the 4-foot section. It's a little bit odd in the back because it's kind of terraced down. So the photo 1 is that's a yardstick. I mean, it's basically significantly lower. We're requesting a 5-foot variance. We in the back on the Tam side, it would be 5 feet. On the Ballard side, it's cut into the hill, so we're using a 4-foot section to match, and then the 5-foot section in the back would match the height. So if you look on the opposite, the yellow would be a 4-foot section, but effectively it's in a hill at 1 foot high, so it's going to match the height. And the back
And this fence has all been approved
that's all been
from
approved.
HPAR. It's just, they actually approved the fence design for the yellow section that's highlighted, but because it's over 4 feet, it needed written permission from the adjoining neighbor, and the adjoining neighbor is contesting it. So the only way to go from 4 foot to 5 foot is with a variance.
And just to be clear, the other two neighbors, there is written permission in the file?
Yes, there is.
Okay, all right. And so it's 5 feet for that 1 extra foot.
And I would say the other rationale, so it would fit in keeping with the height. We would never go above the 4-foot fence. Even where we join it, it would be at that height. And the adjacent fences in the backyard of the cross property are at least 5.5 or 6 feet. The current fences that are there. And it's a scallop design that is visually lower. And so, I mean, the deer will still make it over this safely, I think. But we'd like to be able to garden and use our yard, basically. So we're hoping to have this approved and installed.
So is there a fence in that yellow line right now on either yours or the Crosses property?
There's a fence on the back line, and there's if you see the pictures, you can see what's there on picture number 3 is what's there. We lost trees, I think 6 or 7 in a storm from the and that's kind of what started this process, is we lost trees, and then we have this big open area, and we'd like to have that finished off and enclosed.
So this is roughly the area right here.
That's
where the
right.
fence is going to go.
And to the left there where Jane described to me earlier that that's like a foundation of an old garage or something, is that on?
To the
To the
right.
right.
Oh,
This
that's,
is the existing foundation for the Cross's old garage right here.
oh, so
And
that's,
this is the Brown property.
okay. So this is looking for the backyard towards the front.
Looking from the Tam Tam's
Correct.
barn forward, yeah.
Got it, okay. And so the foundation of the Cross's garage does not encroach on the property line.
No, if you look at photo 2, there's, we are planning on doing a raised survey stake. So when we do this, there's no question, we have the stakes in and we have the fence people install it at that time. So there'd be an ongoing, we clarify it at that time. If you look at the middle of, they put some stakes in, but they didn't put enough in. On number 2, there's a silver pipe. That's leaning against the cross property, but the bottom is on my property. And there's a brown pipe. And at the base of the brown pipe is a stake, and that's the nominal property line. It's kind of between my white fence and the Cross's foundation, basically.
Okay,
I should say the property line is a straight line, so there's only so many places it can go.
and so on your survey, you show what I presume is an existing fence closer to the house? With the
Yes.
little line with the
Yes,
block.
that's the mid property. That's right.
And so you're gonna take this on the property line and then return it back to that?
We're going to take down a large part of the midsection fence that blocks the lower yard so we can use and see the lower yard.
Right,
And then we're going to connect the 5-foot fence to the 4-foot fence. So it's hopefully looks pretty seamless there.
But you're not picking up this fence and
No, we're
moving
not.
it to
We're,
the
we're
property
keep-
line.
no, that's correct. We're keeping the existing fence and we are connecting the lower yard to it.
so you're just gonna go from that point, so it won't be actually on the property line until it gets towards the Tam Tam end of things, the back of the property.
No, it'll be on the
Spirit
property
full side.
line until it gets to the mid part, and then it will
Right here.
connect to the mid part fence.
Okay, so it's not a straight line of the side property fence, it's gonna jog at that point.
Yes,
The
exactly.
Got
top.
it. Okay, I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's about a foot or so, probably.
it doesn't look like much, okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have any.
Okay. Jane, have you given the Browns the criteria that we need to review?
No, I will do that for the next meeting.
Okay, there's a series of questions, Rich, of that kind of guides our decisions or, discussion. I would say that I can only think of one, maybe been more than one in the past where we've actually had a similar request to this of a variance for the height when the adjacent neighbor objected. So it's happened once in a while.
Well, and I should say that with the existing foundation, the amount that will poke above that is 2 feet or less. We're really, I mentioned that because in terms of visual obstruction, we're also if you look, we're asking for a fence in part so we get some relief. I hope the village takes that into consideration also from our standpoint.
I may come back and walk in your backyard because I understand the photos, but I really don't necessarily feel like I have a full sense of all these little short walls and foundations and things like that.
That's fine. That's fine. Anytime.
All right, thank you.
We're down to 1 dog, so we don't need as much fencing.
I think it would be helpful if those walls could be shown on this map. Either just hand sketched in or something, just to show where they are in relationship to the boundary line.
If you see where the garage is, that line that goes across is where the walls are.
There's a retaining wall right here with like a couple steps down.
Okay,
So it's just there's still gonna be an elevation change from here to here.
yep,
So when this 4-foot fence comes in and this one ties in with it, there's probably a 12-inch step. So they'll actually look like it's continuous
Yep.
height
No, I know.
across.
Yeah, I understood that. I just didn't know where those walls were located. It's hard to-
Yeah, it's looking
Right.
from the backyard barn towards up the property, and and that's a yardstick. So it just kind of gives you a sense of how much
Mhm.
we're talking about in terms of the height.
Yeah, I understand that part.
Okay.
It's just in not
It's good.
having seen it, it's a little hard to put it in perspective, that's all.
Okay, so unless anyone has an objection, I'll set a public hearing for 5 o'clock at our May meeting, which will be May 4th. And because this is an area variance, Jane will send out notifications to all your adjoining property owners, so the Crosses will get a notification as well as everybody else. And we will have our public hearing then. And most likely we'll have it Zoom, but you'll hear if we end up having it in person.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
How about it?
All right. So
I'm
is
not sure which one is Perry's going to, there he is.
there, okay. Oops, his audio's off.
Your audio is not working, Perry.
Nope.
Not sure whether that's a Zoom setting or it's it's probably
He's not muted. He doesn't seem to be.
right. It's not a Zoom setting. It's,
Maybe your volume.
Yeah, it's that he has two different things on me.
I know.
All right, hold on.
It's that one where you have to do it on your
Oh,
computer as
connecting,
opposed
yeah.
to,
He says he, okay, connect. mute. Hello.
Hi, I got it. Sorry about
Hear you.
that.
Thank you. How are you?
All right, Susan, how are you?
Very good, thanks. All right, so we have a minimum quorum here tonight, but we have enough to do the work of the zoning board. 124 Main Street, give us please a summary of what you have in mind here.
Okay, 3 separate issues. One store I would like to put axe throwing in the rightmost store where that little general store used to be. The center store, I'd like to put video games in there. And then in the rear, I want to give the property to Larry from Doubleday Batting Cages for his parking operation. And I'd like to put food in front under that overhang, which is 124 property. So that's it. And I don't know how you want to handle it from here, but that's an overview.
Okay, when you say the food, you mean outside or under an overhang?
Yeah, outside food. I'm going to deliver food from the Hardball Cafe next to the Wax Museum. I was going to set tables up in that section, that 8-foot overhang or whatever it is, 6-foot overhang.
Okay,
okay, that one you hadn't talked to me about at all.
No, but it's my property. I don't think I needed permission. Of course, if I need it, I'll ask, but
is there, I mean, I know that the trustees give permits but generally encourage sidewalk dining.
Right.
What is the
But
process
it's,
for that?
well, sidewalk dining, it depends on whether it's on your property or the village property. The village has to grant permission if you're going to do it on their sidewalk. But
Yes.
typically it's only allowed as part of the same property.
I
So
would
we've
have
never
to
talked about where, I mean, it's kind of the same situation that you had to go through for them to allow you to serve on the key bank as opposed to where the Hardball Cafe is. It's
Right, but I
it's not the
wouldn't
same
encroach on-
structure.
village property. I would stay on 124 property. I
Right, but
think I have
you're
enough space.
transferring food back and forth, so
That
I'm not
agreed.
sure whether or not
Okay.
that's, I'll have to do
Right.
research on
Not a
that one, 'cause
problem.
that one wasn't talked
Okay.
about at all.
All right.
Okay, so we'll just stick with the 3 that then were, the applications are actually filled out.
Okay.
And for now, and so Jane can kind of understand the food piece of it more and we'll deal with that in another meeting if it involves our board. Okay, so the first one, Jane has reviewed all these and decided and interpreted that they're not in compliance with permitted uses in the zoning law, and also are not in compliance with anything that is a potential special permit use. So, and because the law says that anything that's not allowed is, or anything that's not listed as being allowed is not permitted. So the only way for these uses to happen then seems to be through a use variance. I know she sent you a lot of information about use variances because we very, very rarely get applications for use variances because it is such an extraordinarily high bar for, in order to be able to meet the, meet the needs of being able to consider it and grant it. So George and Randy, have you looked through some of this information that Jane?
Yeah, I reviewed it. I reviewed it all. Yes.
Okay. So I would make sure that you're aware, Perry, that it is extremely.
Jane was crystal clear about that.
Okay.
I just don't see the distinction between throwing an axe versus a baseball at the Doubleday batting cages or swinging a bat there. So, you know, the lawyer in me doesn't see that it's the same as shooting galleries, amusement arcade, but that's okay. I wanted a preliminary meeting and that's fine. So.
Okay. All right. So then, and I know she's asked you for the, as you can see in the information she sent you, there's really like the first one where it asks for, let me find the list. Where the property is incapable of earning, we have these 4 criteria that we have to, the applicant has to show all of the following. Property is incapable of earning a reasonable return in initial investment if used for any of the allowed uses, and actual dollars and cents proof must be submitted. I haven't seen that submitted.
Which Shane pointed out to me. I didn't know I had to submit actual proof. I thought on its face, 2 of the 3 stores are empty and they've been for quite some time. But obviously I could easily submit that. That's not a problem.
Okay, I would ask you to do that, and you have to submit it for each of the permitted uses.
Okay.
Okay. That it's being affected by unique or at least highly uncommon circumstances.
Okay.
And if granted, it will not alter the essential character. I know that you've given some kind of real simple answers to some of these questions, but they really need a lot of argument, I think, in order to have any real chance. I do have one question on the application for, let's see which one it is. I guess it's the axe throwing one. I couldn't read one of the words. I didn't understand it, I guess. Under 3, second to last line, there's been much approval to the point of an anxiousness to form leagues. I don't know what that means.
Oh, there's been much. I don't have it in front of me. Enthusiasm is a word to that effect.
Oh, okay.
Everybody, locals are excited for it, is my point. I don't know what word I specifically wrote. I don't have it in front of me, but I'll get that, obviously.
Okay, yeah, look, I think it's meant to say approval, but maybe there's a better word.
Okay.
It is that there has been much approval to the point of an anxiousness to form leagues.
All right.
Right, that's what it says.
All
What
right.
does that mean?
What's that?
I said, what does that mean?
People are excited for it.
Oh,
It's hot as could be downstate here, and I went to several places. It's like I don't know. I haven't seen such enthusiasm in a while for something new. So it really is. And I did it with my son, who's going to be heading up there this summer. And it's pretty cool. It's very cool, actually. So,
Is that for the axe throwing or is that for the video games?
yeah, for the axe throwing.
And can you kind of specify exactly what you're planning on doing in the other store, in the other? storefront?
I,
The game room.
yes.
I know. Can you
I was gonna
list
put a
exactly
couple,
what you're thinking of?
I was gonna put a couple pool, here's my mindset. The 28 corridor is beating us up pretty good. There's not much excitement on Main Street. I think if we are fortunate enough to open this summer, Dreams Park is not going to let people hang out on the premises and go see other games. So it's my mindset, we need something for the tourists to do, as well as locals, but more so the tourists. So I was thinking a couple pool tables, a couple baseball video games, skee ball, basketball. That was my wisdom.
Okay, and Jane, if you can, especially for Randy and Georgia, kind of go through those pieces of the relevant pieces of the law that you were reviewing and considering this.
Well, I mean, the whole idea is to classify what Perry's planning on doing it. And we specifically say that arcade games or arcade galleries are not allowed. They're not permitted uses. So when you start looking at what the definition of arcade venue is, it's basically 3 or more machines that are used for, you know, for either music or games or things like that. So I interpreted, you know, all of these things because they're all going to be paid features. It's not like he's just inviting people in just to use the thing, that it warrants the definition of amusement arcade. And then at that point, it's not permitted. So it really, you know, whether it's a mixture of pool tables, skee ball or whatever you're saying, video games, combined, all told, it's going to be more than 3 things in the space.
So as of right, I could put 3 per address?
No, because technically you still have to tell me what your use is that's listed on the list of permitted uses or special permitted uses that I gave you.
Okay.
And it still doesn't qualify as a retail store or shop, a personal service shop, a bank, an office, a restaurant, a theater, a single family dwelling, a 2-family dwelling, a multiple family dwelling, museums, communication facilities, which is a utility, hotels, places of worship, or healthcare facilities. It doesn't fall under those categories.
Okay. I
So
agree with that. That's how it's written. So if I had one of those uses, I could put 3 machines
yes,
in
as
that.
an
Okay, fair.
they would be considered accessory uses at that point.
Right. And don't misunderstand me, board. I understand the game room is a much higher bar than the axe throwing. The axe throwing.
No.
No,
No,
the other way
I don't think
around.
so.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, the axe throwing, I think Jane's interpreted, and I think it makes sense that the section of the law that says no shooting galleries, right? What is it?
Right.
And
It
similar
says-
rules.
I basically interpreted axe throwing as similar to a shooting gallery. And I don't know how you'd argue that it isn't a similar use. It's not the same use, but it's similar. And here again, shooting galleries are not permitted uses.
And they're not permitted anywhere in the village, right? Not even as
Correct.
accessory use.
Correct.
Out of curiosity, does that rule apply to like dartboards in the bars?
Here again, that's where we get into you're allowed up to 3 things. So I would assume if you were doing a row of 6 or whatever dartboards and you were strictly doing it as a one-off itself, it's not part of the bar. It's, there's a difference between having those things available in a restaurant or bar as opposed to that's all it is a dart room.
And it's mostly scale, I would say.
Right.
And whether it's accessory to some permitted use, yeah.
Yeah, that would be normally an accessory to a permitted use, in my view.
Right.
But if you were talking, and that's why Perry's basically been talking this whole way is these are the main use, and then
Yep.
food or
Okay.
whatever is accessory to that. And
Correct.
there is nothing that I can, there's no way for me to sit there and come up with a way to allow
So
it.
the way the law is written, if I opened up a store that sold axe throwing clothes, a retail facility, and I put 3 axe throwing lanes instead of 3 dartboards, is that permitted use?
That one I'd have to think about. I
Yeah,
can't say yes or no right now, because if you're still planning on offering that as a business, as a way to make income, that's different than just having it as like trying it to see if you like it. If you're still charging that people to come in and use it and create tournaments and leagues, then
Probably not.
it's not part of an accessory use to a retail store.
But I think the other difference, though, is the axe throwing and the kind of games are kind of 2 different categories. The axe throwing as a similar use to a shooting gallery is not allowed, period, not even as an accessory use, is what I would say. The other one, the pinball machines or pool tables or things like that, up to 3 are allowed as an accessory use to a permitted use or special permitted use. But it doesn't, I don't think you can have 3 shooting galleries anywhere either. It's not the scale of shooting galleries, it's the use of the shooting gallery that is the issue. And I don't think there's any provision at all for that in the way that the law is written.
And again, forgive me, how did this end up being classified alongside shooting galleries? I guess to me, they sound completely different. These are not guns. They're not required to be licensed. I don't think you need a license.
The shooting gallery has nothing to do with licensed guns. It has to do with to me, a shooting gallery is a game thing. It's instead of darts or pool tables, you used to be able to go into like shooting galleries where they gave you like a BB gun and you aimed at targets.
Right.
It's not a shooting gallery at like a gun range. This is an entertainment thing. Does that make sense? It's not.
I guess that's
right.
I guess depends on your interpretation.
What is the distinction between swinging a bat at a batting cage or throwing an axe at an axe throwing facility, or throwing a baseball to clock your speed?
Well, for one thing, the way he has his batting cage set up, the only way you're going to get hurt is if a ball hits you. If you're throwing the axe, you could drop it, you could accidentally, throw it by mistake and hit somebody else. You're not creating areas where there aren't going to be people standing around them, where, if you go and reach your hand back and you drop it, the axe could hit whoever's behind you or whatever. Batting cages are a little more secure to that range. And I don't necessarily say there's a difference. It's just, I didn't have to deal with batting cages. So
Okay.
I'm not saying what it is one way or the other. But yes, Georgia, as far as the shooting gallery, it's not a gun range. It's more an entertainment facility.
Okay.
So these other axe throwing facilities you've seen, where are they located?
Virtually everywhere down here. It's insane how many there are. I want to say.
So how do they get permitted?
It's in the city. I mean, I don't know what the qualifications are down by us, but nowhere near as stringent as up there, which is okay. I like the quaintness of our town, you know what I mean? So
Right.
I'm all right with that, but I don't know what the permit procedure is, to tell you the truth. I'm sure it varies by jurisdiction.
So technically there's one in Colony, one in Camillus up by Syracuse, and another one in Albany. But
So the laws
One's-
there
one's-
are different than the
one's
laws we
listed-
have.
one's listed as being in a recreational center. Um,
Which would be different than being in a storefront on a main street, right?
I mean, all of these are basically, looking at the rooms, it's, it's set up kind of, like a gym or something like that.
Right.
It's.
And so they also have, and I'm brainstorming here, I'm not, I know what the law says. They have outdoor facilities. Would that be a possibility in the backyard?
Right now, until we get to the point where we figure out whether it can be allowed, period, it doesn't really matter where it's taking place.
Right.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
I'm just trying to see what the facilities are, just to see what they're calling them and how big these things are.
I think if for us, it would be helpful to have that type of information from the.
Well, so what would you, I don't need answers tonight. All right, I'm all right with, giving you everything you need so you can make an informed decision. So specifically, what would you like me to put together with respect to the design and layout and what they're called, or what would you like?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would like is all the responses to the use variance, because that's.
Okay, which I have
That is
written down.
that's
Okay.
your highest hurdle.
Okay,
But in order to understand that, I mean, the best description you can give of,
okay, I'll be more detailed. I know I was succinct. And the difference between a use and an area variance?
is enormous. A use
Okay.
variance basically means you're allowing a use which specifically was, never, not allowed in that zone, and.
Okay,
And I remember asking one time I asked Martin the other day if he's ever known any use variance applications that, met the threshold, and he said maybe one or two in his career. I remember asking Diane Carlton, who used to be the chair of the planning department for the Otsego County, and asked her the same question. She said she could think of one.
okay,
In her career. It's a real high bar because you have a lot of permitted uses, and you basically have to show some reason why, your building was built for is one of the newer buildings downtown, really.
Yeah.
And it's been occupied with all kinds of different uses, all of which have been permitted to date. And why somehow now that is an impossibility, whereas all of Main Street is under the same kind of rules and regulations. And
You can't be too loose with the variances because you can establish precedent that would totally change the character of the neighborhood. So you gotta be really.
which is
tight
fine
on
with
it.
me. I'll respect the board's decision, you know what I mean? But the
Okay.
businessman in me has to try, that's all.
Okay,
Of course.
all right.
Well, you got a nice property there and you want to be able to use it to make some
Yeah.
income, so. Just tough right now.
Yeah. All right.
So I would say maybe then we're premature to set up a public hearing now, that we need to really ask you to come back with the other kind of detailed.
Which is fine, I'll get that together in a
proof
week.
And all that. And
Okay.
then we'll see you at the May meeting. Is there, except for more description about sort of the operation, anyone else have any other questions?
The parking, if when are we
Okay, yeah,
closing?
That's kind of a different piece. You're right. We need to get to that. So maybe Jane, do you want to give us a run through on C, the parking piece of it?
Okay. After consulting with Susan and with the chair of the planning board and talking to Martin, basically, we've determined that this technically qualifies as commercial paid parking. As of December 2019, commercial paid parking was removed as a special permitted use in the business district. So here again, at this point, it needs a use variance to move forward.
Okay. Okay,
But
Prior to 2019, it was easier to do it if it was a,
In
Special
2019,
priority.
before 2019, we allowed commercial paid parking
right.
yes,
in the village, in the business district, right? We eliminated the use in the business district when
It's-
they adopted the new code.
it's still
And-
allowed in the commercial district,
Yes. But they removed it from the business district.
right?
Where is the commercial district versus the business district?
Your
Um,
hotel,
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Where would
business?
that-
Okay,
I mean, commercial is that whole stretch route along the railroad
okay,
and
It's mostly up there, yeah.
leather stocking, credit union area, things like
all
that.
right.
And
I was just curious more than anything.
then
Okay.
down by Price Chopper and I can't remember, were those business or commercial at that
There's a
point?
funny little,
Yeah.
I forget, but I think,
The Stewart's, CVS and Price Chopper, I think are the commercial. I'm
yeah,
trying to remember offhand.
I think you're
Which
right.
one's which.
I found the map.
So was there ever valet parking in the business district before? Do we know?
Well, there's very little, like valet. Go Jane, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
It's a
Valet
challenging thing to
parking,
figure out.
right, valet parking is not in of itself a thing. It's mentioned in the code once. As
Right.
far as, being used and it's only allowed, in certain areas. But it's not a use in itself. So here again, we're trying to classify what Perry's trying to do
Right,
for this area behind the buildings. And Perry, just to let you know, if you do get businesses that go into these spaces, technically because you have parking available in yours, you have to meet the parking requirements for each one of those spaces. So if there was a restaurant in one and an office in another, and then you've got the hairdressers, technically we need to calculate how many parking spaces you have to allot for those. And then at that point, you wouldn't be able to use any extra spaces, or you'd only be able to use extra spaces for additional parking. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I'm being held to a higher
Yes,
standard than virtually every other business
Right,
on Main
because
Street,
you
but that's
have-
okay.
Not
You're
very
being
many
held
have
to
parking.
it. You're being held to it. The other people are getting away, are being waived from it because they have properties that don't have available parking.
Okay,
It's not,
and
go on.
I'm sorry. I have a question. If I want to offer valet parking at the Hardball Cafe and truly not charge any money, just give people a place to park so I can increase attendance.
Then it's not commercial paid parking.
Right,
You're just
Okay.
using an area,
right, my
That-
available parking. Okay,
right?
so to me, that would be all right, right? The way the law is written.
As long as you're not losing spaces that you're required to have for your businesses, yes. you
Which
are
I
allowed.
understand. Which
Right, I would
understand.
say you are allowed to park that.
Okay,
And then we just have to determine whether it, as a space that has more than 5 parking spaces, whether it still needs to go through planning board approval just as a parking plan. But it might have already done that, so I'm not sure. I have to, this was all stuff that was done before I started, so I'd have to check on that. But
Yeah.
if it's not paid parking, I would say that you would be allowed to just use your parking spaces.
and another question, and forgive the brainstorming, but so I could formulate a plan. If I want to accept cars in the alleyway and then park them up by the hotel or by Bruce Hall's lot, am I violating anything?
Are you charging?
I would charge, yes.
So that would mean you'd have to get a special permit for commercial paid parking on whatever property you own that was in a commercial zone that had excess parking available for that use.
But the acceptance of the cars in the business zone, you know what You see the distinction, you know what I mean? I'll park them where they're supposed to be parked commercially. I think we're gonna be hurting for parking.
So your permit that you're asking for is to park on the railroad in parking lot, not there. So yes,
Right.
you would be able to probably accept cars where you're talking about and move them up there, but you still need a permit to do that.
Right, which
if
is
you're
okay.
charging.
Okay. Okay.
Is-
All right,
is
because
the
maybe
app-
that's, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'll say,
Susan.
is the alley completely your property? I don't remember how that,
Yes.
It
I
is
own
because
both
he owns
buildings.
both
both
buildings.
sides, got it. All right,
All right,
okay.
all right, because maybe that's a possibility for me and,
But like I
Plus-
said, you don't technically have extra parking spaces because
no, but
when
if
you
I
are
made it,
full.
right,
you
no,
have,
not
you know,
there, but the lot by Bruce Hall, he's got a beautiful lot there. Between the railroad building, not railroad
So
in.
then technically the person who owns the property is the one applying for the permit.
Right. But again, the businessman in me is
Yeah.
looking at, it's been a tough year.
Yeah,
So,
which I
and
don't
I
know,
think it'd be nice, you don't want to socialize, you don't want to intermingle with people, so I think it'd be an added advantage to our tourists, so. Okay, all right. I'll put it together. Thank you for your time, everyone, and then,
Okay.
I'll
so,
submit it.
so I guess that one, I mean, for you to do what you initially talked about, that also requires use variance or require all the different dollars and cents documentation. If you figure out some other way that, you know, to, like you're talking about Railroad Avenue or LA and all that kind of stuff, that is interpreted in a different way, or that, you know, applies differently in our zoning law and does not require use variance, we wouldn't obviously need a use variance. So I would suggest that maybe that this next month, in addition to kind of getting the other information for A and B, that more clarity on the parking, so that if it needs to go for a use variance review, we would just start that in the same cycle with the other use variance requests.
I agree
Okay.
with that. I agree with that.
And I will check into the dining end of it to see if you're allowed to.
All right, and again, I wouldn't encroach on village property, it'll be on my
I
property.
understand what you're trying to do. I
Yeah.
just, you hadn't mentioned that part of it at all when I've been talking to you as far as
I
outdoor
thought I
stuff,
did, my
so,
apologies.
no.
So the area under the overhang, that's your property?
Correct.
Because
Okay.
it's set back a little bit.
Yep. I walk through there on occasion.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, thank you very much for your time.
thank you very much.
All right, take care, guys, thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
thanks.
Right.
So we have to review minutes. I don't know that do we have three people who are, everyone was here last
Randy
month.
was at last month's meeting. Georgia,
I
you
was
you
Georgia
were
was
here,
there,
right?
I was there, so
Yeah.
we can review the minutes. The other thing I wanted to kind of get a reading of everybody on is, we were talking about this a little bit before you joined us, Georgia, is that from some point in the past forward, for a little while, we can decide whether we want to continue to have online meetings or whether we want to do them in person.
Okay.
And so I didn't know if anyone has any thoughts. I personally, I guess, don't feel like we're ready quite yet, but I think there are some benefits of in-person meeting that when we're all comfortable with it would be, and we may be comfortable before HBAR or planning board is, I don't know. Do you have any?
The only thing I would say is that I know that one of the benefits of having it online is that you can live stream it to YouTube. Is that something that we would consider continuing if we were to go back in person, having that live stream still?
I don't know, does that?
I know that the village has switched, I mean, they're not live streaming it through YouTube. I think it's going through Facebook or through on their Facebook page somehow. They've switched how they've been doing the trustee meetings. So I have to look in to see how that one's working, to see if it's something that is doable one way or the other. I'm not really sure how many people actually log in to watch kind of thing.
I watched
These,
the Otsego County trustee ones, so
right. I mean, it's a little different. No, like I said, when I go to the YouTube channel, I never see too many people have viewed
Right.
our boards kind of thing, to see how many people are actually paying attention to that. And
But
it
if-
makes sense to do the trustees and things, but
even with the trustees, is there somebody that's actually photographing it? Because
they
that,
have a camera that basically
Is it?
catches the whole board.
okay,
And right now, sound is terrible, so I don't know how they're handling that, because,
and when they have a
Right,
public hearing, how do they handle that?
it's I mean, everything's been in person for the last couple months with the trustees.
Does the
So-
camera capture the person speaking, or how? Is
No,
there someone
the
out
camera
there?
does not move.
Fixed
It-
camera,
Correct.
okay.
So yes, it's more just kind of to keep a record of it, or just in case you had to check it out, but it's not working, it's not a perfect condition. Whereas at least with Zoom, with everybody's, logging in individually, you could still see everybody. And if we had, applicants or whatever, you can see them addressing the board. The public comments and things like that, I don't believe actually get caught, or if they do, it's just kind of just as a small person kind of thing. You can't necessarily see exactly who it is, other than getting their name and info from when they introduce themselves. So I'm not sure. I'll check into that to see what's going on. But as far as you personally, you don't care one way or the other, as far as you're not uncomfortable with meeting in person.
For me personally,
Yeah.
no, not at all. I guess my only concern is that obviously for our public hearings,
Mhm.
people who want to be there have to be able to be there. And I know that there's some people who still won't be comfortable
Yeah.
attending a public meeting. So having some kind of, whether it be live streaming or something that we set up,
Mhm.
having a way for them to still be able to participate, even if they're not comfortable being there with us, would be my only
Maybe-
consideration.
I would say, it's gonna be hard to do a hybrid. Maybe that really speaks to just kind of doing it by Zoom as long as we can, until everybody's
I mean, the one thing that we don't do right now, offer, unless somebody specifically requests it, is to allow for people other than the applicants to participate. I mean, we had, one person who requested to participate as somebody making comments, but typically it's just the applicants themselves. So, I mean, we're not against it, but it's not like you can just click on the link while you're watching and say, I want to talk about this kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I
You
mean,
have to know ahead of time and actually send them the link. So,
And it is, it is different, and I think that traditionally, public hearings, obviously people appear in public, or you can send written comments ahead of time. The only option now is written comments ahead of time. So if I was, wanted to make a public comment about something, I don't think that I would feel like that was likely to be as effective as being there in person. But it's an accommodation for this for the shutdown period. So I can see a benefit of ultimately going back to in person, particularly, for those controversial things that come up about once every year or two. Like axe throwing, maybe, I don't know.
well, come on, everybody wants to do it.
Was it? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, well, like I said, I just did a quick search on my other computer and it is coming up, but basically you're in a room similar to like a gym or something, where it's basically just
It's like
lanes with
archery.
well,
it's
they're
archery or
divided,
whatever.
I
Archery.
Right,
guess,
I mean,
like
right,
walls between the lanes.
no, not in the pictures I was seeing, but
I have never
So, I
seen
mean,
one that wasn't fully
it's-
divided.
it's
That's
only
Have
impressive.
you
great-
been to one?
I have friends who post pictures all the time, and there's always some kind of divider. It's like,
Yeah, there's probably
Some
some safety
plexiglass
measures
or-
in place.
yeah,
but
I'm sure
it
that
Seems like there's,
guessing there
I
are
hope so.
rules about what they're
it
allowed
seems
to
like
do.
there would be some significant liability with a business
Yeah.
like that.
But I mean, basically, it's like going to the gym and participating in, some kind of either archery, like Michael said, or something like that. It's not a social get together and let's drink and eat and party kind of thing. Or if it is, they don't have enough room in this space, because looking from the
What?
pictures, I don't
You
know
want
how.
inebriated people throwing axes? I don't know if that's such a good idea. But anyway,
All right. Well, we'll have to, that's to come. All right, so
so do we
Minutes.
decide on the Zoom? I think we ought to continue the Zoom meetings for now.
well, definitely, I think, sounds like next month. I mean,
Yeah,
how much notice will you have when it's no longer an option, Jane?
He can only extend the executive order for a 30 days at a time.
Yeah,
So every, whenever it's up, this one goes through April 20th, the latest one.
okay.
So I'll check on the thing to see, what's happening April 20th and see if it's been, you can set it beforehand for a 30-day from that period. But the last day right now is the 20th. So
If he doesn't extend it, that means we have to meet in person in May.
correct.
Okay.
so I was interested in George's comment that she's watched some meetings online, and I wonder whether, I know that there were obviously, not necessarily zoning board, but trustee or school board or that kind of meetings that I think have gotten to be pretty standard online in some format.
But you can only observe. You can't engage in the discussion, can you?
I guess I've heard of it before the COVID shutdown, so I assume it really was just informational. Yeah, not that you could participate in any way. But I have no idea whether I would assume that the trustees would, if they continue any of that after COVID, they'd prioritize trustee meetings way ahead of any of the zoning meetings or ahead of water board or, all that. There's a lot of boards that meet and have to at some point
Mhm.
prioritize things. But I hadn't thought about that component before.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, go on, Michael.
I was just gonna say, I think some of the boards have members with health issues, so that becomes a whole different set of concerns or,
Like during COVID or previous to COVID.
well, I think it kind of runs across, I think it's health concerns that they have about themselves that makes them more vulnerable in the time of COVID.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find with other boards that I'm on, there's, obviously there's a lot of ease of sitting at your own home and participating, like this. At the same time, I do feel like some things are going to be lost in terms of the direct public contact and comment particularly. But okay, so we'll just take it kind of as it is. But I would say any time that anybody, maybe at the next meeting, if we have more members, we can continue to talk about just general comfort with,
And like I said, as soon as I figure out whether or not it's definitely, if he definitely ends it, I'll let everybody know as soon as I hear, just so that you can prepare one way or the
is
other.
it-
Like I said,
If we were to do a hybrid meeting, is it possible to set up a conference call so that people that can't come in person could call in and at least participate in the discussion?
are you talking about board members or applicants and other participants?
Well, board members and potentially
Board members, once the executive order goes away, either they are there to participate at the meeting or they're not in the meeting.
Okay,
period.
got it. Understood.
So
any idea whether whether there could be public comment via audio only or?
I guess there could. I don't know whether we have the facilities to do that, because it's not, right now, the only thing that's happening with meetings is they're being photographed and,
Yeah. Understood.
It's just
with microphone, and then there's microphones. So it's going out. It's not where they're actually getting anything back.
Right.
And we'd have to deal with, some kind of a screen and some kind of a format that comes back, so it's like a back and forth Zoom, but also.
It makes it more complicated for sure.
So the trustees have had public hearings when they've met in person during COVID?
Yes, as far as I know, all the public hearings that the trustees had have always been in-person meetings.
Okay,
Because there's only been one or a couple after the initial onset where they've been trying to do in-person meetings. They were just limiting, at the start, come summertime or whatever, they were limiting the number of people that could actually show up and stuff. And now at right around Christmas time or whatever, when there was the second wave, right after Thanksgiving, they went to online for, I think, 2 months, just because of the fact that everybody was getting it, was getting back in heavily in this area. But they haven't had, I don't think they've ever actually had a public hearing where it was online. And they had to
Okay.
deal with public comment that way.
okay.
So,
And they also probably haven't had anything particularly controversial for public hearing.
no, I mean, the last public hearing was last month with the smoking ban.
Oh, well, some of those things could be. Okay,
So, and they have the public hearing for a special use permit in the waterfront overlay district next month, or this month.
okay.
So, but we
Now-
also have a
So
public hearing.
what do you
So-
need as far as the minutes are concerned?
Does anybody have any changes?
Yeah, if
or
anyone has
corrections?
any corrections or changes, and if, I know I've read them.
I read it over. I don't have any. Look good to
Did you have
me.
a chance to read it?
Hold on.
Oh, sorry, was that directed towards me?
Yeah, did you have a chance to read? What is like,
I skimmed, yes. I didn't see anything that,
I printed this out and for some reason, page 5 is virtually blank. Is there some format issue there?
It could have been a thing where there was a page, yeah, it could just be a formatting thing.
Okay,
I would
Yeah,
recommend you could fix that, but otherwise, all the text is good as far as I could tell.
okay. So, does anybody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last March 2nd meeting.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
George, a second? Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Susan,
Aye.
aye. George, aye. I heard Randy, aye.
Aye, yep.
Good, all right. Anybody else have anything to talk about?
No, I think that's good for today.
Okay, all right. We're done.
I actually
Thank
have
you.
one
Yeah.
quick question. I know when I first came on, you guys had provided me with the revised zoning law, like the PDF of that, which obviously came from like reviews and changes and corrections. And how often is there like a standard for how often the rules are reviewed for like current applicability, as it were?
I would say that there's not, I would say that they are periodically reviewed, but it has, in my experience, it's happened more when there was a specific kind of general topic that needed to have further study, like there was a long review and study of the tourist accommodations. There was one, the most recent one had a lot to do with revising all the zones and zone regulations. I would say to get into the minutia of like shooting galleries, I can't remember any time when that's even been raised as a question, like to look at things like that or terminology, or unless it got caught in the broader review. I don't remember that happening. And I would say generally speaking we know of some issues right now with the law that are just kind of inconsistencies and errors, and they're taking a while to get addressed. So I don't know if the trustees have any specific thoughts about a next review or a focus for a next review.
I mean, I think as it stands now, other than fixing the issues that Susan was referring to, I don't think they're planning on changing anything or adding anything new. It's, and as Susan said, typically the main things that get changed with the code are, parking issues, which is its own chapter. There, the village code has, it's chapters 1 through 300, but they're not all filled. There's, probably like 30 plus chapters, and zoning is one chapter in that thing. So they've made corrections to other areas or added things. We updated and revised our noise ordinance, which was one of, its own chapter. There's a sign ordinance or a sign chapter that deals with that. So as far as the zoning one, I think that the major one that happened at the end of 2019, they were hoping basically covered everything. And other than to kind of make the corrections for things that didn't necessarily get caught in that revision, I don't think they're planning on changing anything else.
But
So
I would, if you see something that I would particularly inform Ellen and Cindy, because they are the two that are
right.
most informed, I would say, about the zoning law.
Right. If you go online right now through the village website, there's a link to the village e-code. The e-code is all the laws that the village has adopted up to last year are incorporated into the code now. So there's a section where it says new laws, and I think it's only 2020 laws, and none of those referred to the zoning chapter. They referred to parking, the parking chapter or traffic chapter, things like that. So if you looked at chapter 300, other than the tweaks that need to be corrected at some point, it is what has been adopted as far as the zoning chapter.
And you say, and all of those things now incorporate, it is completely up to date. The zoning
Other than the 2020 laws. And like I said, I think all the laws in 2020 were.
There were no zoning changes in 2020.
There were no 2020 zoning changes. So let's see.
So I mean, when I was looking at something with Jane earlier today, that there was something not in my print copy that I usually refer to, but that was on the e-codes copy, so the e-codes was more current. If you have an old print copy or an old PDF, I would suggest that you
Okay. The only thing that changed in 2020 that affects the zoning is they adjusted the zoning map to incorporate the vacant lot down where the Dunkin' Donuts was trying to get in. It was zoned commercial and they changed it to a residential. So that little bit of the zoning map changed in 2020, but otherwise nothing in the zoning chapter changed. Otherwise it's just vehicles and traffic, the mask and face covering, and streets. Something happened with the streets one. So those are the only laws that haven't been officially incorporated into the e-code online. So
is there, whatever zoning map is online right now then is not accurate, fully accurate?
yes,
Not up to date?
it is. The one online is up to date.
Oh, it is, okay.
It's just that that the law itself occurred in 2020 and it didn't, all it was changing the map. So
Okay.
that I was able to do. It didn't have to, we didn't have to change anything as far as the
Okay.
wording or code. So, or you can link to the code. It does look like though that they don't have the right one when you go that way. So I'll have to adjust that.
I would say, Georgia, like probably like the last 10 years or so, there have been maybe like 3 or 4 times when there have been major revisions to the law, and most, if not all of them, involved kind of developing some kind of study group, because I was on probably most of those, that would meet every month or so for 6 months or a year or whatever. And sometimes the whole effort got bigger than you ever expected when you started. And generally speaking, I would say we tried to, it's always a challenge because you kind of have a singular focus or reason why you start that review, but you also know that there's all these like 6 or 8 different problems you'd rather fix while you're at it, but you hesitate to kind of like go outside your focus. So it's never a,
There's a lot of stakeholders and special interest groups you have to satisfy in some way, so it's not easy.
and sometimes it's not so much that they're controversial, it's just that you
No,
have a focus and you don't want to,
yep,
add or deal with extraneous things, but that means that those don't get dealt with either. So it's, but that's been kind of the history of how changes have happened, that they have been typically pretty major revisions to sections of the law at least, but not necessarily, I would say, I can't think of a time when the entire law has been scrutinized. It's really been a section, and then a number of different parts of the law end up being impacted by it, but not necessarily. It's really hard to kind of step back and say what's missing, what did we not put in, or what, something is buried in here that we no longer makes any sense or something like that. But that's also a hard effort to do, but that's not something that's been usually part of any revision effort that I've been involved in.
Thanks.
All right.
Just curious.
Okay, oh, it's a good question. All right, so I will make a motion to adjourn. I don't usually do this, but let's second for adjourning. All right.
I'll second,
My
I'll
dog has
second,
been inside for like 6.5 hours and I feel
Okay.
terrible. So,
I'll second.
Good, all in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
okay.
All right, good night. Thank you all for coming.
Good
see you
night.
next month.
Bye.
Bye.
Night.
What time is it? There we go. 6:20.
6:21.
Okay, thank you. Bye, have a good
Bye.
month.
Bye, you
Stay
too.
well.
Thank you.
All right, I have to